Hi everyone, Asif Khan here with another series of Trailblazers in Value-Based Care with an amazing guest today, Tim Martinez, CEO of MPAC Healthcare. So welcome Tim for joining us.
Thank you, glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about MPAC Healthcare and then we kind of dive into some more value-based specific fun questions.
Sure, yeah. MPAC Healthcare was founded back in 2014. We are a medical group made up currently of mostly nurse practitioners and licensed clinical social workers, and we focus on providing on-site care to skilled nursing, assisted living facilities. We're up and running in 3 states, Illinois, Indiana, and California, over 100 facilities, and we service both rural and non-rural communities.
Awesome, well thank you. So first question, top of mind that's in everybody's mind is like there are different types of organizations like yourself and traditional post-acute care that are thinking about, hey, I'm operating in fee-for-service, but value-based care, I'm starting to get the sense of it because Medicare keeps coming up with new regs every few months. What's your perspective around this transition from fee-for-service to value-based care?
Yeah, great question. And we, since inception, our focus has always been on value of care, right? Not really knowing ultimately where the system was going to end, right? Because we knew it had to, we knew there was talks, we knew there was lots of options. We didn't have a clear path. We still arguably don't have a clear path, right?
I agree.
But when we started, we saw what was happening and we knew that things should be done better and should be done differently. Yep. So we've started from the very beginning, our focus has really been on the quality of care versus the quantity of care. Even though we've existed in a fee-for-service world this entire time.
Right.
That makes it a fairly difficult model to run.
Yeah.
Because we are, in essence, on average, spending more time with patients and therefore seeing less patients per day. But we strongly believe that is the right thing to do. But ultimately, we knew that the system had to change and flip to a value-based care model. So, so from our inception, we've been very, very focused on value-based care, even though the system hasn't been ready for it yet.
Right. So what I hear you saying is like spending more time with, obviously, patients. Not everything you're going to get paid for, but you're going to spend that time anyways because you want to provide the best possible care.
Correct. And it's not just the amount of time, it's the appropriate amount of time.
Right.
Patients are sicker and sicker, right? Ending up in skilled nursing facilities, rehabbing, and they just need more proactive care, more preventative care. And our providers need the ability to spend the appropriate amount of time with the patient to truly serve their needs and provide the care on site and in place to do ultimately what we're trying to do, which is eliminate preventable hospitalizations and treat in place as much as possible. So our model is very much focused on that, from how we treat patients, our process of how we treat patients, and ultimately how we compensate our providers as well.
Got it.
To align all those incentives.
So it's more focused around, like with the lack of a better word, we all know patient-centered.
Absolutely.
Right? So what's the right thing?
What's the right thing for the patient?
For the right thing for the patient, and then you work from that point.
Exactly. We work backwards from there, right? Ultimately, take everything out of the equation. What would you do that, in your opinion, is the right thing to do? And then we work back from there. What does the system compensate for? Ultimately, what is the value we're driving? And then we have to figure out that final component is how do we get paid for the value we're delivering then?
Got it. Perfect. That is obviously, if patient-centered, and in post-acute care, our patients or seniors kind of go through a lot of different transitions, right? From a hospital to transitional care to maybe even now we're seeing assisted living being in the middle, and then they potentially go home. So there's a lot of collaboration between different entities.
Yes.
So you not only patient-centered, but also understanding the dynamics of the care around that patient in different entities that are going to be taking care of them and communicating, coordinating with them, and going from there. Can you share your vision? So that's kind of like, you know, makes sense. Hey, you know, from a value-based care, this is what needs to be done. And I'm glad you guys are, that's why we are here talking about it, because you're an innovator from that perspective.
I mean, a big part of it, especially in the way our model works, is we have to be very, very efficient.
Right.
So we leverage technology a lot and a lot of it comes down to communication and collaboration. Our providers essentially become what I would describe as the quarterbacks on site.
Good word, yeah.
with the patient, right? They are there to first and foremost provide care to the patient, whether it's our nurse practitioner providing medical care or clinical social worker providing mental health care. They are there to support the facility staff. We bring essentially a higher level of clinical capabilities to that staff so they feel supported. We're also there to collaborate with the existing medical team, who's oftentimes not on site. So we sit sort of right in the middle, and collaboration and communication is very, very key to making sure that we're all working together to ultimately to drive the same goals.
What's your vision like? You're starting definitely like with this provider group, and I take it you actually dedicate people at a facility level that becomes like part of an extended team, which is amazing.
That's right.
And they, to your point, become quarterbacks for the seniors or patients in that building,
right?
And you kind of go from there. Where do you see kind of some of the next steps in moving towards value-based care? What are some of the other things top of mind?
Yeah, I mean, data is big, showing improvement in outcomes or the outcomes that we're able to drive. Ultimately, transitions of care that you brought up earlier.
Right.
Patients who are transitioning and are discharging home, following them home and treating them at home more often
Makes
than
sense.
not. Make sure that they're not bouncing back to the hospitals post-discharge. So that's some of the things that we're starting to look at. Telehealth is big.
Sure.
We see a huge opportunity there as well.
Thanks for that. So, and I think you kind of already touched upon the technology piece of it. Talk a little bit about your thought process around technology, because you're one of the innovative groups that I have seen already try to use technology that are like, oh, it's not working, switch. So it's already very exciting to see provider group that's so because a lot of times people get stuck with the technology, and even though it's not working, they're like, oh, I can't rip the Band-Aid off. I've already seen you kind of rip it off twice in a very short time. So your philosophy on technology, why it's important in value-based care, with some of the stuff you're doing, can potentially get even inspired in a way that, hey, if Tim can do it, maybe we can give it a shot.
Yeah, so I mean, one of our core values is being innovative and disruptive. And we very much take that approach to everything we do. I, for example, my background is not in this space. So I bring an outsider's perspective. I ask a lot of questions. Why is this done this way, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of times we get, well, this is the way it's always been done. We don't accept that. So with that, we are open, and our organization across the board is very open to testing new things. Sometimes they're going to work, sometimes they're not. But if we don't test them out, if we don't validate that, right, we know they're not going to work. And so we're open to testing things that are going to make us better, help us provide better care, and ultimately allow us to then scale up our services to reach more and more patients.
But one thing that you said is very powerful, like asking the question, if somebody says, oh, it's already done this way, like, why?
Should it be done that way?
Right, should it be? Yeah, so I think what we're talking about is orthodoxies, right? We just have these ingrained, especially I think in healthcare, because everybody's used to treating patients their own way and for long periods of time, and it just because more clinical, it's understandable that people just keep doing the same way, same old things. So I think the point that you bring up is very important for the audience, I think, is really need to think about or question their own orthodoxies, right? What are the ways that we believe it should stay in this box, right? And kind of go back and say, maybe we either bring an outsider or somebody else to say, hey, this is the way we're doing it. Can we do it differently? Can we do it better? Or just ask yourself internally. So even though we're talking about technology, but I think it's a very fine point you make.
So it's interesting because what our clients have come to expect from us is bringing them lots of different ideas, tools, and specifically around things that we're doing. So as we start to formulate an idea around potentially a new service line or a new product offering, I start to talk to our clients and say, look, here's what we're thinking. How do you think this might affect the way we deliver services to you?
Right.
So they're already accustomed, right? And sometimes they're like, no, that's crazy. We would never do that. I have a couple of examples where they've told me, you're crazy. We would never do that. A year later, we did the program. They're now excited about rolling it out in their facilities. I think it's important to have that relationship with your client base where they're expecting innovative things from us. They're expecting us to bring that to them. So their model's changing, right? The way they're compensated as a skilled nursing facility operator or assisted living, their whole world is changing. They have to, PDPM just went into play, right? So they have to be focused on that, and they have to, I guess, have a level of comfort that the people that they're partnered with, we're handling what we do best, and we're looking at other alternatives and maybe other technologies and other services that are ultimately going to bring benefit to them as well. So that's a big advantage. I guess a shameless plug. A big advantage of working with MPAC is that we're constantly trying to come up and figure out new things, and our clients are in the long term going to benefit for when we do hit those, the home runs and figure out the things that really are going to work.
So it's funny you say that, because that's kind of like, as a technology guy, right? I always think about my products that way, right? So hey, we know this problem. Here's this potential technology solution, and then talk to your partners, customers, like we do all the time, right? So you're like, oh, that'll work, or oh, here's a better way to do it. Here's, so this way you kind of work out really nicely. So in a way, I think which is exciting in this discussion is you really, even though you're a clinical provider, your mindset is more about constantly thinking about your product or your offering.
That's right.
Or your service.
Our suite of services.
And you're basically thinking about, hey, I know these are the 3, 5, 10 problems my customers have or the industry has, and how do I solve this in the most creative way, and then based on those, you come up with these different models. You go talk to these different customers, partners who are innovative, and sometimes they like it, or sometimes they're like, oh, I don't know. But then they come out, they keep thinking about it, and then they come back in about another year and then say, hey, Tim, you talked about that thing.
And sometimes we miss, right? Sometimes what we had planned doesn't work out, and we're okay with that, and they're okay with that. They know that we're not going to always be 100%, but they also know to expect that when we do hit on something, when we do develop a program, there's going to be a ton of value for them as well. And so ultimately, what I want our partners to feel like is that every time they partner with MPAC in a new facility or as a whole, we're helping them kind of supercharge from a clinical perspective that facility.
Talking about that, and then with respect to some of the things I mentioned earlier, like you kind of rip off the Band-Aid on a couple of things. So can you talk a little bit about the technology you did pick, or in this case, Hucu, for example, some of the key reasons or elements that you partnered?
Yeah. So let me talk about a couple things first. It was a lot easier, I would say, for us to trial things when we were a much smaller company, right? You kind of throw it out there, it doesn't work, you pivot, try something else. I think there's a misnomer out there that as you get bigger, it's harder to pilot things like that. The way we do it, as you've seen, as we've piloted and are now going full rollout with Hucu, is that we select a subgroup within the organization. So we haven't stopped innovating. We haven't stopped testing out technologies. We just use a smaller subset of our organization to test something out, validate it. Once we're good with it, we then roll it out to everybody. Whereas before, when we had 15, 20 people, everybody can test it out, give thumbs up or thumbs down, and you either go or no go. Now we just pick 15, 20 people to test it out. So in particular with Hucu, why we've partnered with Hucu. I mentioned we're in 100 facilities across 3 different states. We do a lot of rural community work in addition to urban. So we have a very spread out organization. Each of our individual clinicians are fairly autonomous in that most of the time it's going to be a single clinician. Sometimes we have an NP and a clinical social worker, so you might have 2 MPAC clinicians in a building. But generally, everybody's kind of autonomous, doing their own thing. And we need to keep them engaged. We need to keep them supported. They need to feel like they're part of an organization. And so from a just initial rollout perspective, we use Hucu as our go-to communication tool from a corporate perspective. So we're constantly having interactions with all of our providers real time. And then next level, the HIPAA compliancy comes in, Our clinicians are able to interact real time on specific patient-related clinical issues, and share information on a patient, knowing that they have that HIPAA protection as well. So how often do you see an opportunity where you can get 50 set of eyes on a patient instantaneously.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? That's best level care, right? If I may feel confident in what I would like to do in terms of an intervention with a patient, but I just want somebody else to just bounce an idea off of.
Right.
Well, guess what? I have 50 people I can bounce an idea off of and get feedback immediately.
Right.
So we use it very much in that vein as well. Next level stuff, we're talking about how do we leverage this to really solidify our clinical workflows to make sure that we're providing the most effective and efficient care possible.
Right.
And then bring it all back to value-based care, right? Patient risk stratification to really help identify at the earliest onset and even predict, which patients we should be spending our time on, because we know that they're the highest risk and we know that spending time with those is really going to pay off, both from a quality of care perspective and ultimately from a financial perspective, for the system.
So thank you for that, and kind of walking people through. What are your recommendations for them to kind of start thinking about moving to value-based care? And you're smiling, so
I'm smiling because we're still trying to figure it out, right?
Got it.
So I'm not going to say that I have advice for anybody.
We're all learning.
We're all learning. What I will say is, here's what I've learned, right? And here's what we're focused on.
Okay.
Starting with doing the right thing. Right? If we're doing the right thing and working backwards from there, I think that's the approach that we've taken. We think that's the right approach. And it's really opened up a lot of new areas and opportunities for us doing that. It's partnered us with the right people who understand and appreciate and are focused on quality, even though we may not have it all figured out yet. Right? Just having that focus and being able to speak to that, I think aligns us with the right client base then. So we have very strong partnerships because they understand what we're focused on. So starting with that. The second component I think would be to focus on what we do well, right? We've been asked to do specific things. Well, I do have this pain point over here. Can you help me solve that? And it was going to take us way off, from course. It's outside of our core competencies, and we've just decided to not do that, right? So kind of staying within our realm and staying within our core competencies. And I think that same advice, if I can give some advice, would go for our client base. There's sometimes an attractive piece to saying, well, hold on, if MPAC can just embed
an NP,
a nurse practitioner and a clinical social worker in a building and upgrade care, and there's a revenue stream there, why wouldn't we just do this ourselves, right? Look, it's not that easy. And it's very, very different to provide actual clinical care and follow the regulations and meet all the requirements, and the landscape is changing. That's very different than providing nursing care and being and marketing to the hospitals. And so it's a different animal.
Very true.
So kind of stay within your core competencies. And the final piece, which is something that we've adopted over time, we don't partner with everybody.
That's a good point.
We've decided to really identify and partner with groups who are like-minded, who philosophically align with our focus on quality over quantity. And so strong partnerships go a long way. And
if you're connected here, then everything else follows through.
I all my clients are my favorite clients, of course. I have one in particular that I speak about internally a lot because they're tough, but they're fair. So we sometimes, we have quarterly meetings with all of our clients, and so we have a meeting, and sometimes they ask about a particular issue that's happening at a facility. And it's not, you're bad and you're doing this wrong and what are you going to do to fix it? It's, hey, we have an issue, let's talk through it, let's resolve it. We've proven ourselves over time that our starting point is do the right thing. And so they allow us the opportunity, even though they're tough, and I appreciate that, they allow us the opportunity to fix things when things aren't going according to plan. And that's a strong partnership, and as a result, we're up and running in nearly all of their facilities.
Wow, congrats on that. So Thanks for sharing that. And I think just to sum up some of the things that you mentioned, and I sometimes try to do that if I can remember, and you kind of hold me accountable and add stuff that I missed.
Sure.
So some of the things I think I kind of taken away from this discussion is move towards value-based care is inevitable.
Yeah, it's happening.
Focus on what's the most important thing, work backwards, which is the patient.
Yep.
So patient-centered, what is the right thing to do for the patient? Who do we need to work with to provide the best care? Work backwards from there. Eventually figure out how you're going to get paid.
That's right.
Amazing how you do it. I don't know. But
well, there's ACOs.
Right.
We're talking to them. There's Medicare Advantage plans. There's Medicaid Advantage plans. So there's all these different flavors of ice cream that are happening, right? And this is the big challenge is iSnips is another one.
Yep.
You know, our model's always been sort of be Switzerland.
Right.
And in our program, so long as we do it the same, and that's our focus, should work across all those.
That's a very good point.
So I'm not looking to any one of those things to solve all of our problems, right?
Yep.
But our focus continues to be quality and outcomes, and that's what everybody's looking for.
Got it, right.
There's a little bit of a different flavor to each one, but ultimately it's the same goal.
The other thing that you just mentioned, the core competency. So focusing on what you're bringing to the industry and the value that you're bringing. Orthodoxies, we talked about, like, so just because something is being done in a way, you know, question it, figure out how you can think about it differently.
Yeah.
When you talk about big organizations not able to innovate or do things like that, I think that's another learning point is don't try to boil the ocean. Obviously, find a subgroup in your organization that can try, you know, things that are things come natural to them, especially when it comes to technology or a process.
Yeah.
There's a group of people everywhere where you are open to change. There are people who are like, I cannot change, you know, at all.
We cover all of our core values when we are interviewing people, so they know coming in here we're innovative, we're disruptive, expect change, right? We're not gonna change for change's sake.
Right, but always looking for better.
Absolutely.
Something better to do. Okay, so thinking about positively organizing some subsegment of your colleagues or groups of people that are change-oriented and try leveraging them to try new things quickly.
That's right.
Without a lot of.
Don't get me wrong, we definitely have more steps in our process once we greenlight something to roll it out to a larger organization.
Right.
But we're not
Just
afraid.
try things out.
We're not afraid of continually testing and searching for a better way, a better tool, better process.
Yep. And then a couple of other things you mentioned, you know, like-mindedness, right? So if you have a specific niche or a specific service that you offer in a post-acute industry or healthcare in general, what is your core competency? And then what's your vision, you know, for value-based care, which, you know, we agree that it's patient-centered, simplify processes and communication so everybody gets on the same page, make better decisions. That's why we are sitting here talking.
That's right.
So finding like-minded people, and because that'll go a long way, to your point. Thank you so much again for coming and talking to us, and hopefully the audience will take away some points and you know, a little bit of inspiration hopefully, and getting something that they can think about actually doing to move towards value-based care. So thanks so much.
Perfect, thank you.